Most people react. They hear something they don't like, and they lash out. They feel discomfort, and they panic. They face criticism, and they immediately go on the defense. But what if your greatest strength was your ability to remain still? What if the real power wasn't in how loud you speak, but how little you react? Napoleon Hill taught that self-discipline begins with the mastery of your thoughts, because your thoughts, when left unchecked, become emotions. And those emotions, when given power, become reactions. But the man who can control that cycle becomes unstoppable. He doesn't just survive the chaos. He moves through it untouched. He doesn't just silence others. He silences the war within himself. People expect you to respond. They expect you to break character. They want to see you flinch, raise your voice, defend your pride. But when you learn to act as if nothing bothers you, you're not faking calm. You're declaring to the world that your mind is your kingdom, and no one else is allowed to rule it. Some people spend their lives chasing approval. They want to be liked, validated, praised. But the man who's grounded in self-mastery doesn't need approval. He knows who he is, and that's enough. He doesn't over-explain. He doesn't beg to be understood. He doesn't give away his energy to every argument, every insult, every whisper in the wind. He simply chooses peace, and that choice is a form of dominance. They call you emotionless? Number. You've just evolved past emotional slavery. They say you're cold. Number. You've simply stopped burning yourself to keep others warm. They say you've changed? You have. You've upgraded. Because when a man realizes that most of the battles outside are designed to provoke the war inside, he stops giving them fuel. He lets the noise echo into silence. He lets the fools speak. He lets the energy pass through him without owning it. Napoleon Hill didn't write for the weak-willed. He wrote for the few who are ready to take command of their own minds, to become architects of their inner world, regardless of the storms outside. That's why he said, "The man who masters himself through self-discipline can never be mastered by others." So while the world reacts emotionally, you must learn to respond with clarity. While others argue over opinions, you must remain grounded in purpose. While the crowd is easily triggered, you must build unshakable calm. Because here's the truth no one tells you. You don't owe anyone your reaction. You don't owe the world your attention. You don't owe your enemies your energy. Every time you act like something bothers you, you give it power. Every time you show they've gotten to you, you've handed them control. And every time you let the external dictate your internal, you fall from the throne of your own mind. But when you hold your peace, you hold your position. And that kind of stillness is not passive. It's tactical, it's intentional, it's strength under control. Learn to observe more than you speak, to understand more than you react, to remain calm, not because nothing touches you, but because nothing owns you. That is where greatness begins. You'll notice something strange happens when you master this. People start to respect you more, even if they don't like you. They can't manipulate you. They can't provoke you. They can't figure out how to control you, because you've taken control away from the world and brought it back inside. You have trained yourself to breathe deeply when others hold their breath, to smile while others rage, to remain firm while the ground shakes. That is the mindset of a king. That is the poise of a warrior. That is the aura of a man becoming something far greater than average. So let them talk. Let them test you. Let them expect a reaction, and give them silence. Give them calm. Give them the unbothered version of you that no longer dances to their chaos, because you've learned that peace is your power. They'll call you distant when you stop explaining yourself. They'll say you've changed when you stop reacting. They'll call you arrogant when you finally value your peace more than their approval. But that's the cost of mastering yourself. When you learn to act as if nothing bothers you, you are no longer playing their game. You're building your own. There's a strange kind of power in emotional stillness. It disarms people. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know what affects you. They don't know what your next move is. And that mystery alone is power. Because while they're wasting their time trying to decode you, you're investing your energy in growth, in purpose, in strategy. Napoleon Hill didn't just speak about riches. He spoke about mental wealth. He taught that real success begins not in the bank, but in the brain. Not in assets, but in awareness. And the man who becomes aware of how easily he used to be triggered, how quickly he used to give away his power, how often he let temporary people disturb permanent goals, that man is already evolving. You see, power isn't just in domination, it's in containment. The ability to hold your fire, to restrain your reaction, to walk away, not because you're weak, but because you've trained your strength. You've trained it not to explode, but to endure. Not to seek revenge, but to seek growth. Not to scream, but to smile silently. That's what makes you different now. You've stopped attending arguments you were invited to. You've stopped replying to nonsense. You've stopped trading your dignity for the illusion of winning. Because some victories are so small, they cost you your peace. So now you stay still. Now you listen more. Now you study everything, and especially yourself. Because you've realized the real battle is not out there. It's inside, where your thoughts live, where your emotions rise, and where your peace either survives or collapses. Napoleon Hill warned that the undisciplined mind is easily influenced, manipulated, and led astray. That's why he placed so much value on self-control, on protecting your mental environment, on refusing to be governed by temporary emotions or outside noise. You've seen the world. It's loud, chaotic, and desperate for your attention. But you've chosen a different path, a quieter one, a more focused one. A path where your calm confuses your enemies and your silence becomes your strongest language. Because the truth is, when nothing seems to bother you, they can't use anything against you. They lose leverage. They lose access. They lose control. That's the man you're becoming, untouchable, because you no longer touch everything, unshakable, because you've grounded yourself in meaning, not mood, unbothered, not because life is easy, but because you are finally solid. So keep going. Stay still in the storm. Smile in the noise. Think deeply, speak rarely, and walk this life like a man who owns himself, fully. Because once you do that, there's nothing left to fear. There comes a point in your evolution as a man where you realize you're no longer reacting because you don't need to. You don't argue because your silence says more. You don't defend yourself because your life has become your answer. You've entered a space few ever reach, a space where your emotions no longer own you, where your mind is no longer the playground of outside forces. And when you reach that space, you stop chasing power, because you are power. The man who acts as if nothing bothers him isn't pretending. He simply moved beyond the need to be understood, liked, or approved. He's become so deeply rooted in his purpose, so focused on what matters, so aware of what's real and what's noise, that the trivial can no longer touch him. They whisper lies, he doesn't flinch. They change their tone, he doesn't notice. They disappear from his life, he doesn't chase. Why? Because everything external has lost its grip on him. He doesn't need to be in control because he's in control of himself. Understand this. Most people walk through life completely exposed, not physically, but mentally. Their emotions are exposed. Their insecurities are exposed. Their sense of self is exposed. So when someone disrespects them, they collapse. When someone ignores them, they panic. When someone criticizes them, they react. But not you, not anymore. You've built armor, not made of steel, but of silence. Not made of rage, but of reason. Not made of ego, but of clarity. You've trained yourself to observe, to listen without absorbing, to remain neutral even in situations designed to provoke. Because here's what no one teaches you. The world doesn't reward the loudest. It rewards the most centered. It's not the one who barks the most who wins. It's the one who moves in silence, stays unpredictable, and strikes with precision. That's who you are now becoming. Every time you choose not to react, you gain control. Every time you stay calm when chaos erupts, you become more powerful. Every time you refuse to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, you reclaim your energy. Napoleon Hill called this definiteness of purpose. It's the idea that when a man becomes clear on where he's going, He stops answering to everything that tries to pull him away. You no longer entertain low-frequency energy. You no longer explain to people who enjoy confusion. You no longer respond to attacks disguised as questions. Why? Because your time has value. Because your attention is currency. Because your peace is sacred. Let them call it ego. Let them call it detachment. Let them call it whatever helps them sleep. But you'll know it's discipline, it's power, it's elevation. And here's what happens when you live this way. You become magnetic. People begin to feel something around you, not because you speak much, but because you don't have to. Your silence becomes your statement. Your calm becomes your presence. Your walk, your tone, your stillness, it all speaks. They'll wonder why they can't provoke you anymore. They'll try harder to get your attention, and you'll give them your absence. They'll expect you to react, and you'll simply move on, and it'll drive them mad. Because they'll realize what you already know. The man who is unaffected, the man who chooses when and if to speak, the man who keeps building while others gossip, that man cannot be stopped. He cannot be manipulated. He cannot be shamed. He cannot be controlled. He doesn't beg for peace. He brings it. He doesn't wait for validation. He embodies it. He doesn't chase strength. He becomes it. This is the man Napoleon Hill wrote about. The man whose thoughts are so aligned with purpose, so clear, so precise, so unmoved, that life bends to his rhythm, not the other way around. So the next time they try to provoke you, pause, breathe, remember who you are. You're not here to prove anything. You're not here to explain your calm. You're not here to meet the world at its level of chaos. You've chosen a higher path. Let them wonder. Let them whisper. Let them misunderstand you. That's the price of rising above. And you, my friend, are rising. It's easy to speak about calm when you're alone in your room. It's easy to pretend you're above it all when there's no pressure, no noise, no provocation. But real power is how you act in the fire. When someone disrespects you in public, when your name is dragged through the mud, when the world misunderstands you, when life throws unfairness, betrayal, disappointment, not once but over and over again. That's the real test. Not when you're praised, but when you're provoked. Not when life is kind, but when it's cruel. Not when things go right, but when everything falls apart. It's in those exact moments that you decide, will I act like the man I've built in theory, or will I collapse back into the man I used to be? The man who is becoming untouchable. He doesn't just talk about mental control, he lives it. He builds a system in his life that protects his mind. He wakes up early, not because it's trendy, but because he refuses to begin his day in chaos. He spends time alone, not because he's antisocial, but because solitude strengthens his self-respect. He chooses his circle carefully, not out of pride, but because he knows energy is contagious. He reads, he trains, he fasts, he waits. Because these things build a man who isn't shaken by noise. They sharpen the weapon that matters most, the mind. The goal is not to escape life. The goal is to engage life with so much inner structure that nothing on the outside can disturb it. You walk into rooms without seeking approval. You listen to criticism without reacting defensively. You see through manipulation without needing to expose it. You become so composed that even your silence feels like strategy. This isn't about acting like a machine. It's about becoming a master of your responses. Because when the average man is emotionally hijacked by every inconvenience, every delay, every insult, every shift in tone, you'll be operating on a higher frequency. You won't chase closure. You won't argue to prove your worth. You won't engage in every low-level conversation. You'll walk away with your dignity. And that walk away is more powerful than any comeback. So remember, when you control your attention, you control your focus. When you control your focus, you control your actions. And when you control your actions, you control your outcomes. And that is how you control your life. Conclusion: the untouchable man. The world doesn't need more men who can scream louder. It needs more men who can stand still while the world loses its mind. Men who don't fold under pressure. Men who don't become emotional slaves to temporary feelings. Men who know the cost of reacting to everything and choose silence instead. The man who acts as if nothing bothers him is not careless. He is calculated. He is present. He is dangerous. Not because he's violent, but because he is completely in command of himself. He does not seek to dominate others. He dominates himself, and that is the rarest form of power. So let the world spin. Let the noise rise. Let people try to break you with words, distance, games, and silence. You'll remain unmoved because you've built your power where no one can reach it. Inside, you don't just act like nothing bothers you. Nothing does, because you've chosen to live above it. This is the way of the calm. This is the way of the few. This is the way of the man becoming great. And now you walk it.